Russia can feel that the collapse is coming. President Trump just announced that he'll be moving forward with more sanctions and secondary sanctions on Russia and its allies, and it seems on cue, all Russian leaders are now coming out and warning the world against a nuclear war. We have Putin, we have Lavrov, and we have Peskov. The usual axis of devil, and now all of them are saying the same thing. West is underestimating Russia. I don't know about you guys, but it seems to me that it was Russia who underestimated Ukraine. They wanted Kyiv in 3 days, and now it's been more than 3 years and they're nowhere near Ukrainian capital. The Russian collapse is coming and Russian leaders are freaking out. They're focused on other countries instead of focusing on Russian citizens who still don't have water.
How do people live without water in Russian-occupied Donetsk? Without honor? Without conscience? Is this normal? You ruin your health completely. For what? Just to be mocked like this.
Since the 10th, there has been no water. Where is the water?
So let's get into all that, of course starting with Putin's comments.
He was here to talk about the economy in Russia's Far East. But Vladimir Putin had a message for the West. Don't send your soldiers to Ukraine.
If some troops appear there, especially now while the fighting's continuing, we proceed from the premise that these will be legitimate targets for destruction.
Only yesterday, European leaders pledged post-war security guarantees for Ukraine, including an international reassurance force on land, sea and in the air. The Kremlin is fiercely opposed.
What makes this situation even more embarrassing for Putin is the fact that it was an economic summit, but Putin really did not want to talk about the Russian economy. The reason for that is simple. You see, the biggest banks in Russia and the Russian central bank are both saying the same thing, and it's not good news for the Russian economy. Before moving forward, if you guys can please hit that subscribe button down below to keep up with all the geopolitical news like this one. Let's begin. According to Kremlin State Bank, start of the recession is here for the Russian economy. And here we have another article. According to the biggest bank chief in Russia, the Russian economy has hit technical stagnation, close to zero growth. That's after Putin has printed billions and billions of dollars to fund his senseless invasion. But anyways, I digress. Let's get back to the point that Putin was actually discussing. He cannot accept foreign troops in Ukraine because somehow that's dangerous to the Russian security. But by the way, North Korean troops in Russia are perfectly fine. You know what makes this situation even more embarrassing for Kremlin? We actually have a brave reporter from BBC in Russia, Steve Rosenberg, who asked the Kremlin spokesperson this exact question in front of a Russian audience. Why is it that North Korean troops can come into Russia and fight Ukrainian soldiers, but Ukraine cannot ask for help from its allies? And guess what Russia did? What they've been doing since the start of this invasion. They ignore anything that makes sense. Listen to it yourself.
We consider it a danger for us, presence of international forces or any foreign forces or NATO country forces on the soil of Ukraine next to our borders. So in our understanding, it will not help us get closer to the solution of Ukrainian conflict.
But why doesn't Ukraine have the right, as far as Russia is concerned, to invite whoever it wants, whichever soldiers it wants onto its territory? I mean, Russia is inviting North Korean troops.
Then it's a danger for us. It's a real danger for us because we are an enemy of NATO.
North Korean troops are a danger to Ukraine.
Written in NATO's documents. So we cannot afford that. And we'll do whatever is necessary to ensure our security.
Russian officials have no shame. They can continue lying until they're forced to stop. This is why we've been saying on this channel ever since this invasion began. Only thing Russia will understand is strength. They don't understand peace, they don't understand negotiations, because at the end of the day, Russian leaders don't care. And I'm starting to realize that Russian citizens don't care how many of their fellow citizens die. Because Putin wants to drag out this war, and that's why he's dragging out the negotiations. Now his newest trick is asking Zelenskyy to come to Moscow to negotiate a peace deal. All the while, Putin is ordering launches, ordering missile attacks against Ukrainian cities and Ukrainian citizens. In fact, just last night, Russia carried out the second largest attack against Ukraine since this invasion began. Luckily, Ukraine was able to repel 800 drones, 9 Iskander cruise missiles, and 4 Iskander ballistic missiles. But like I said, this was one of the biggest attacks. That means 9 missiles got through and 50 plus drones got through. They resulted in 3 dead, including 1 infant. For Russia, he was likely a NATO commander to be, and that's why Russia is happy to kill kids. That's the excuse Kremlin officials use all the time. It doesn't matter if it's an infant, it doesn't matter if it's a 2-year-old, it doesn't matter if it's an 80-year-old. To Russia, everyone is part of NATO, and that's why Ukraine has no right to exist, and Ukrainians have no right to a peaceful life. So personally, I don't understand why Russia would be mad if NATO soldiers are in Ukraine. Because every time Russia kills Ukrainian citizens, they already say he's part of NATO and that's why he deserved to die. So why not just approve actual soldiers? And it seems every time President Trump is about to do something or Western leaders are about to do something, support Ukraine, support Ukrainian fight against Russia, Russian leaders always come out and openly make threats against Western citizens. This is what Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov had to say just yesterday.
They didn't attack those people, you know? They messed with the wrong people, you understand? And what amazes me is that the West still can't draw any lessons from centuries of history in the context of its repeated attempts to restrain, subdue, and punish Russia.
It's funny how Lavrov wants to talk about how West cannot learn from history, when in Russia, you get arrested if you mention Russian history. You see, in Russia, it's actually illegal to talk about the Stalin-Hitler partnership that happened in 1939. The partnership that led to Hitler and Stalin taking over Poland. In Russia, it's also illegal to mention that Stalin sent millions and millions of Russians to Gulag. For some reason, Putin wants to rebuild the Soviet Empire, and he does not want Russian citizens to learn the truth about the former Soviet Empire that actually existed in this world. Here we have a Russian grandpa who actually knows his history, and this is what he had to say about Stalin. Let's listen in.
Stalin was a murderer. He killed a lot of Russian people. He buried our strongest. And now we've all become weak because the strongest were buried by him.
Unfortunately, that grandpa was jailed for 1 year for saying something as benign as Stalin killed all the strong Russians. If I was a Russian leader, I would want to promote that kind of saying so it doesn't happen. But Putin wants to make it illegal because I'm guessing he wants to rebuild the Soviet Empire. And luckily, I truly do hope when I say this that it seems like US administration is finally getting ready to put actual pressure on Russia. After all this effort wasted on negotiating with Vladimir Putin, we finally have some statements that kinda seem like we're making progress towards a US-EU sanctions, not just on Russia, but any country that's supporting the Russian war machine, that's supporting Putin's pockets. That will include India, that would include China, that would include Turkey, another NATO member, and of course Brazil, and of course some European countries. Here's what Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent just had to say.
We're prepared to increase pressure on Russia, but we need our European partners to follow us, because if the US and the EU do this together, we are in a race now between how long can the Ukrainian military hold up versus how long can the Russian economy hold up. And if the US and the EU can come in, do more sanctions, secondary tariffs on the countries that buy Russian oil, the Russian economy will be in full collapse, and that will bring President Putin to the table.
And it's not just Bessent. President Trump has been making comments about Putin all this time, and it seems he's getting ready to take some action. Because at the end of the day, unless President Trump gives the go-ahead for the sanctions, nothing's gonna happen. As many of you guys may already know, on the Senate here, we have a bill on the docket that gives President Trump power or ability to sanction any country that's supporting Russia's war machine. And All he has to do is make the decision, and he has the legal backing to do the sanctions. Now, we wait for the action, and it seems it may be coming next week, because this is what he just said after the major Russian attack that we covered earlier in the video.
Russia had a pretty big attack on Ukraine over the weekend.
All about it.
You have always said how good your relationship is with President Putin, but he's not really giving you anything that you want. Is that making you less trustful of him?
Well, nobody was tougher in Russia than me. That has to do with the pipeline, as you know, Nord Stream 2 and lots of other things. But I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I'm not happy about the whole situation. You know, it's interesting. It doesn't affect us because it's not our soldiers. But they're losing now. I used to tell you 5,000. They're losing 7,000 between Ukraine and Russia, 7,000 soldiers every single week. It's such a horrible waste of humanity. So, no, I am not thrilled with what's happening there, I will tell you. I think it's going to get settled. So I settled 7 wars. This, I would have said, would have been maybe the easiest one to settle of all. But with war, you never know what you're getting. But we're going to get it. I believe we're going to get it settled. But I am not happy with them. I'm not happy with it. Well, we're going to see. I mean, we have some very interesting discussions. You know, Europe, certain European leaders are coming over to our country on Monday or Tuesday, and individually. And I think we're going to get that settled. I think we're going to get it settled. We have to. You can't lose. You know, when they're losing 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers a week for no reason, you have to get it settled. Of all of the wars, whether it's the Congo and Rwanda, they said it was impossible to settle. You look at every one of them. I mean, every one of these wars were impossible. I got every one of them settled, 7 of them. 7. This was the one I really thought would be the easiest, but it's not. But I think it's going to get settled.
YouTube just dropped a mind-boggling announcement. It is paying creators $64 million per day. Why? Well, because YouTube doesn't have enough creators. That is why you see videos on your homepage that have less than 1,000 views, like this one right here. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that everyone should start a channel. But if you have ever wondered about starting a YouTube channel or a faceless channel, now is a perfect time. YouTube is paying creators millions of dollars every single day, and it's pushing newer and smaller channels now more than ever. But I'm sure you have many questions on how to start and grow a channel. We get questions in our email all the time from some of you guys. That's why we decided to put all our YouTube advice into one YouTube video for completely free. So if you're someone interested in starting your own channel, you can watch that video here on YouTube by clicking the link in the description or card on your screen. Now, previously, President Trump has said that he was in phase 1 of his plan, which basically meant that he was trying to get a peaceful resolution by giving a lot of concessions to Russia that Ukraine actually agreed to. Ukraine agreed to an unconditional ceasefire. Ukraine agreed to stop attacking Russia's energy infrastructure. Ukraine also agreed to meet with Putin wherever he wants, not in Moscow, but wherever he wants. And even after all this, it was Putin who did not want peace. Clearly, phase 1 did not work, so the hope was he would move on to phase 2. And it seems like phase 2 involves putting pressure on Russia. And he was asked this question recently, and this is what he had to say.
Are you ready to move to the second phase? Are you ready to move to the second phase of sanctions against Russia or punishing Putin? How was your call with the Prime Minister?
Now, we also have some clips from President Zelenskyy, who responded to Putin's offer of coming to Moscow to negotiate peace. And his answer was pretty clear and pretty simple. All the while Putin is attacking Ukrainian cities, killing innocent Ukrainian citizens, a Ukrainian president will never go to the city where the decisions for these attacks are being made. That city is Moscow. President Zelenskyy was clear as day, said, "We will not go to Russia at all until Russia stops attacking innocent people." Here's what he said.
He can come to Kiev. You know, if a person doesn't want to meet during the war, of course he can propose something which can't be acceptable by me or by other. It's understandable. I can't go to Moscow when my country is under missiles, under attacks each day, I can't go to this capital of these terrorists. It's understandable, and he understands it. It's the same proposition, as I said, that he has to come to Kiev. Yeah, so it's understandable that he is doing it to postpone the meeting. We said, I always said we can't trust Putin. He plays games, and he's playing games with the United States. I think so, it's to my mind.
Now, of course, he went on to clarify that he's not saying that he does not want to meet Putin. He's actually the one who came up with this idea. He wanted to meet Putin and directly discuss how to stop this senseless invasion that Putin started. He just does not want to meet Putin in Russia. And also we have to remember, no matter how many promises Putin makes about safety of Zelenskyy, this is the same country and the same leader who promised that they would never invade Ukraine. They broke that promise. In fact, it was Putin himself who promised in 1999, then in 2008, then in 2012 or 2011 that Crimea is part of Ukraine. He made those public statements that we have video clips of. He publicly said Crimea is not a Russian territory. But in 2014, he broke that promise. Then, on February 20th, 2022, just 2 days before the invasion, Putin publicly said that Russian soldiers on the Ukrainian borders have no intention of invading Ukraine. Then, just a couple of days later, he broke that promise and launched his 3-day special military operation. I think history is proof enough. We cannot trust Russia. We cannot trust Putin. And that's why President Zelenskyy does not want to go to Russia. He's happy to meet with Putin in Saudi Arabia and United States, both countries that Putin has visited before. Here's what President Zelenskyy said.
Mr. President, I'm ready for any kind of meeting, but not in Russia. Any kind of meeting, bilateral, trilateral, we'll be happy if you will be. And even preconditions which we had at the very beginning of the year, that ceasefire and then meeting. Then we spoke about security guarantees and then meeting. By the way, I'm thankful to the United States that if in the Washington, D.C., when we had meeting, the president said that America will be in security guarantees. I hope that it will be.
He also goes on to explain how we can stop this war. And only way we can do that is by putting pressure on Russia and countries that are supporting the Russian war machine. As President Trump himself has said, you need 3 things to win a war. Money, money, money. So if we go after how Russia is making money, we have a pretty good chance of making sure Putin comes to the peace negotiations.
We all understand that we need additional pressure on Putin. We need pressure from the United States. And I said that I think that President Trump is right about that. Europeans, I'm very thankful to all the partners, but some of them, they continue buy oil and Russian gas, and this is not fair. To be open and to be clear, it's not fair. So we have to stop buy any kind of energy from Russia, and by the way, anything. Any deals with Russia, we can't have any deals if we want to stop them. The most power has White House, and I really count that President Trump will do it with pressure on Putin, and this is only one way how to stop the killer. You need to take off his, to take off his weapon. Energy is his weapon.